Hello, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. This is Robin Stuckel, your host. Today we have vet Sarah Lowry, and I know Sarah from back in the day in an old neighborhood when she was a graduate student. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Hi, Robin. So good to see you.
It's really good to see you. It's been years.
Many, yes.
Yeah. So when you were our neighbor, you were going to grad school.
Yes, we bought that house. I wasn't in grad school yet. I was working when we bought the house. My husband was getting his master's and PhD, but then while we lived there, I went to vet school.
And then how many years is vet school?
So typically you do 4 years of an undergrad bachelor degree and then 4 years for vet school, just like medical school. Some people don't get a bachelor's degree. They just do their prereq, so it can be less. I got a master's in between. So I actually went to college for 12 years.
Oh my gosh. So take us through after you graduate. Then what is the process?
So after you graduate vet school, you can do a number of different options. You can do an internship, which is just a 1 year. It's kind of like just being thrown in the deep end. Usually it's emergency work at a different vet school or at a really high capacity clinic. A lot of people use it like, we already know we want to move home and we want to work for the vet that we grew up with. We just want 1 year to like do something different. So I would say maybe 20% of my class did that. And then obviously after that, some proportion will go into residency, just like in human medicine. So I know in our class specifically, we have a board certified anesthesiologist. We have at least 2 board certified pathologists. We have a couple people who did like zoo residency. We have somebody who is who does like would manage an SPCA kind of residency. But obviously you could do neuro, cardiology, oncology, pretty much anything you can think in human medicine. And so then you would do 1 year internship, and then you'd probably go to a different vet school to do a residency. So my good friend Caitlin, she moved to Colorado, did an internship at a high capacity clinic, and they actually asked her to stay on for a 2nd year. So she did an emergency internship, and then she did a surgery internship, and then she went on to UC Davis. We all went to UW Madison to start.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah,
our alma mater.
And so she then went to UC Davis and did a 3-year residency in anesthesiology. And she's had a couple jobs, but she currently is the anesthesiology faculty in Minnesota at their vet school.
I didn't realize that there were so many different areas that you could go into.
Right. Yeah. Probably whatever town you live in, there's probably specialists if you Google it. So I live just north of Buffalo, New York, and we don't have enough specialists, but we definitely have someone who owns their own ophthalmology clinic, someone who owns their own derm clinic. Usually oncologists need to kind of work. They can't have just their own office because they need a lot of, medicine and imaging and stuff like that. So usually they work in a hospital. Same with like a cardiologist, but some of the other specialties can have their own.
And these are all for animals.
Yep. Exclusively. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right. So then the rest of us who aren't that motivated or are older or, we just go out into private practice. It's not probably super ethical for a vet to come out of vet school and start their own practice or just work solo. You really need a good amount of mentoring. Unlike a dentist, like if you go to dentistry, you only do 2 years of classes because you're only learning like, this much on one species, right? So if you're a dentist, you only probably do 2 years of classes, and then you have at least 2 years of hands-on. We have 1 year of hands-on, and you just barely touch a little bit of everything, right? So when you get out, you typically need to work for somebody else that will mentor you and train you and give you a lot of support. For I mean, I would say a minimum of 6 months, but a couple years is usually better. But they say an internship is like 3 years. It's like the equivalent of working 3 years in just like a regular practice. So that's why people like it. But so most people just go out and get a job in a clinic as a new grad and hope you get a good mentor. And if that clinic doesn't fit, you might move on to another clinic. It just kind of depends, there's a lot of personalities and stuff, just like anywhere.
Sure. Did you know all of this before you went into vet school? And how did you decide to go and be a veterinarian?
So I grew up in a farm in the Central Valley of California. It was a what we call cash crop farm. So we didn't have animals. My family grew cotton, almonds, corn, stuff like that. But we definitely, I was in 4-H, we definitely, the farm had been a dairy previously, like definitely people loved animals. And I was that little girl who always had a kitten in her arms and, but I guess it was kind of in the back of my mind, but as nobody in my family had gone to college, it seemed really far-fetched for me. And so I kind of just did baby steps. Like I finished high school and I'm like, well, I'll go to college. And I got a degree in animal science. And then I applied for vet school, but didn't get in. So I ended up getting a master's in dairy nutrition. And I thought I would be a dairy consultant. Like I thought I would go around to the dairies and consult about nutrition. But the problem is that career is very focused on being a salesman. So you work for a company that sells a product. So yeah, you consult the dairymen on their nutrition, but you're also trying to push products, right? You're trying to get them to buy this grain or this mineral or this whatever. And it became very clear very quick that I wasn't any good at that part of it. I'm not a salesman. I'm still not. I'm never going to be that vet that upsells you on 10 things. It's not who I am. So I kind of floundered for a few years, and then we were in Madison. My husband was in grad school. He's like, why don't you apply to vet school again? And now that I had a master's, my GPA was much better. I had a lot of other things under my belt. And then I'm like, fine, but obviously I can only apply to Madison and I can only apply once. And so I retook the GRE, which is the test you have to take to get into most graduate programs. It's kind of gone by the wayside now in most programs, but back then you had to take it. And so I got into Madison and that's what I did. But it was definitely one of those things that I was like, maybe. As far as like residency and all the specialties, not really. Like, because I was a large animal person, I hadn't spent much time in clinics. Like, lots of people will be like clean kennels and then work their way up and be assistants and have all this like experience in small animal clinics before they go to vet school. But I had worked on a dairy, I had milked cows. I'd had a job in a primate center for a while. So I did not fully understand all the options and all the things. Because I was a little older when I went to vet school. I was 33 when I graduated, and some of the kids were like 25 and 24. I mean, some of my classmates were really young. I knew I didn't want to do that. And I had a baby between second and third year. And so I just wanted to work and have a normal life. I didn't want a crazy schedule.
Did you work at all in any of the Madison areas, or did you start basically your career internship in the New York area?
Yeah. So when we finished school, we loved Madison. We would have stayed forever, but it's really hard to find jobs there in our field because everybody wants to stay. And especially my husband is a professor in geology. And really with that, you just have to go where the jobs are. And so as he was finishing up, the only job in his field, the only position available was in Buffalo. And he's like, how do you feel about Buffalo? And I was like, I literally have no feelings about Buffalo. I've never thought about Buffalo. All I know is that it snows there. And he was like, well, they have lots of cows. So we probably lived here 5 years before I stopped hating it. but I've definitely come around. I mean, it's very Midwest, and the weather is a little bit worse than Wisconsin. It's not as sunny. It's a little warmer. But now, it's home and we've settled down and we're here till retirement. And Buffalo's a cool city. Like once you get to know it and you spend time here, like I said, the people are very Midwestern. I love my clients. I love my farmer clients. So no, we never worked in the Madison area. Unfortunately, it's really, really hard to do. If you're a professional, it would have been weird for Chris to stay in the department that he'd done his research in. Most people don't do that. So, as much as we're Badgers at heart, we had to move on.
You'll always be a Badger.
That's right.
When you got to Buffalo, did you do an internship?
I didn't. So they're not very common in large animal medicine. There is a few, because most vet schools have a large animal department and they might offer like one internship at a time. So they might have one intern that's there for a year and then they get a new one. But again, interns have crazy hours. They work long, hard shifts. They're on call all the time.
So you just jumped in?
I just jumped in and I actually only worked part-time because I had a 2-year-old. So I got hired by a large animal practice north of Buffalo in the county. Buffalo's in Erie County. I got hired up in Niagara County, which is about 20 minutes north. Niagara Falls is in our county.
I was there in October.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Did you love it?
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I have a friend who lives in Buffalo and she loves Buffalo. She calls it Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do. I mean, it grows on you. It's a pretty cool town. So no, yeah. So I started in a practice where I mostly did dairy work and I only worked 2.5 days a week. I mommed, I had another kid. And yeah, it was good for me until it wasn't. And so after doing that, and I found a real love for what we call small ruminants, which are the sheep, goats, alpacas, just because I'm only 5'3" and cows are pretty big. And so as much as I do absolutely love cows and the dairy work, I just realized it was killing me. It was killing my body. The hours are awful. You get called at 2 a.m. to do calvings. And so when we had been here about 8 years, my husband had earned tenure in his position as a professor and was due for a sabbatical. And so I was kind of over my job. So I quit my job and we packed up our life and we moved to South America for a year.
I do remember seeing that. Yes.
So that was super fun. He worked and we threw our kids who were then 5 and 9 into school in Spanish. And we just had a great year. And while I was there, I kind of thought through what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to, and I couldn't go back to my old practice because they had replaced me. And I knew I needed to kind of be done with dairy work. And so I started my own solo mobile practice. So I'm still in my car all day. I'm still driving around. But I really focus on the backyard pets kind of thing. So like I have 4 goats in my backyard, a lot of 4-H animals. I do a few small cow herds, like, we're organic or we're Amish and we milk like 20 cows, something more like that. But I can't make a living doing that because most of those people call you once a year, once every other year. So I balance that with, I do end of life in dogs and cats. So I do hospice, palliation, acupuncture, and a lot of in-home euthanasias. So I come to your house and, we either assess quality of life or see where we are. I don't have a pharmacy. I don't have x-rays. I can maybe do blood work, but I probably don't want to. Mostly it's just comfort care, looking at their life, seeing how we can make, help them die well, basically.
Tell our listeners about how acupuncture works with animals. I did see a picture of the cutest little pug with acupuncture.
Okay. So that was one of the things when I was in Chile, I was researching doing end of life, and over again, they're like, you need to have somebody on your team who does acupuncture. So I started looking around and my husband's like, why don't you be that person? So
Chris,
there,
he's always so smart.
he is the ideas guy. He always has the ideas. Um, so there is a acupuncture school institute. I think it's a university now because I think they offer master's degrees, but in Florida. And the guy who started it is Chinese. He came over here as an adult. He was to start an alternative veterinary medicine program at the University of Florida vet school. And so he still is faculty there, but he started this, it's called the Chi Institute, or I guess the Chi University now. And it was it took like 6 months. I mean, not full time, but it was a big investment. And so if you've ever had acupuncture on yourself, it's very similar. We do a lot of diagnosing with what your tongue looks like and your pulses. And I mean, obviously we know less about pets because we don't know where it hurts or whatever, and some animals it doesn't work for. Some animals, especially cats, won't sit still. They don't like it. They're too jumpy. I think it's a little better that I do it in home versus in a clinic. But I've had great success. I always tell people it's not like you're snapping your fingers and your dog that can barely walk because of arthritis is going to be 2 again. But, it's a lot of, my dog hasn't gotten the car in 2 years. My dog hasn't gone upstairs in 6 months. My dog stopped getting on my bed, and now they can. Now they're doing that again. They're definitely less painful, more mobility. I've definitely had the most success with that. I had a horse, a pony that was you go to that fall farm where you're getting your pumpkins and they have the ponies where you put your little kid in, they just walk in circles. One of those ponies that was just a little sassy, didn't like the chubby kids, just get a little, and I just kind of acupunctured her for general well-being. We didn't know what was wrong with this horse. She's been great. And that was like 3 years ago. So it's kind of hard to explain. It's bizarre. I definitely wasn't a believer before I did it. I've not really ever been into the alternative medicine stuff, but I see it work. They explained to me the science behind it, but it's a lot of stimulating nerves, and yeah, I don't know. It's really cool. And I mean, if there's a lot of human applications, obviously, not just pain. I mean, if you have chronic migraines, it's hugely helpful for menopause. There's just lots of things that it really helps.
What do you do for continuing education? How do you stay current on topics?
So there's so many things to do. And legally, I have to have so many to keep my license up. I love going to meetings. So that's what I do. I either go to the American Veterinary AVMA, American Vet Med Association, which is the biggest meeting. A lot of times I'll go to the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. It's all large animal stuff. Cornell, because I live in New York, has a great meeting every October. I mean, you can also, there's tons of online stuff since COVID. But for me, I use it as an opportunity to go to a cool city, catch up with some of my classmates or my friends in the industry, and just learn a new skill. I mean, there's lots of things that you're like, I wish I could, be better at dentistry. I mean, they even have like hands-on classes. So a lot of your regular vets, like they might say like, I do orthopedic surgery, but they're not a certified orthopedic surgeon. They've just invested a lot of time and energy into that for their continuing ed. You just kind of feel what you love. Some people love dentistry, some people love derm, and a lot of people will throw their continuing ed in that. there's stuff that you can read constantly, studies that come out. With social media, people will like comment on a medication and I'll be like, I've never heard of that. And then you go learn about it, or, somebody asks you to do a new thing. I'm still a big fan of the textbooks. I have this one right here. I was reading right before you call. I'm doing acupuncture tomorrow for something I've never done before. So there's a lot of self-learning that you can't ever stop, because you can't ever know everything.
For somebody who wants to go into the veterinary world, what type of advice would you give them knowing what you know now?
So this is kind of a hot topic. The lots and lots of veterinarians have stopped advising people to go into the profession. The profession is very changed over the last decade. I don't know if you've heard this. We are like number 2 for suicides.
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons for that. And probably for every vet you ask, you'll hear different reasons. Kind of the top ones are, we come out with really high debt. A lot of vets will come out of vet school anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 in debt. We don't make what MDs make. And so that makes it a kind of frustrating struggle. We don't believe in suffering. We believe in euthanasia. We have access to really good drugs. I think there's a lot of reasons. One of the top ones that I know it's hard for people to hear is how poorly we're treated by our clients. So we get a lot of, if you loved pets, you would do this for free. For me, the biggest reason I think we hear that from people is because people have no idea how much human medicine costs, because your insurance pays it, right? So you get a hysterectomy and you were probably charged $50,000. We spay your animal, which is the exact same surgery. And if we charge 1,000, we don't love pets because we should be doing this for free. We just get treated. And a lot of times it doesn't fall on us. A lot of times it falls on our staff and the receptionist and blah, blah, blah. People just aren't kind. And I think that's what, vets, I have a great life. I have set myself up where I have great hours. I say no to things. I don't have a boss telling me what to do, but vets work very hard and very long hours. And those hours are very stressful. I do a lot of relief in small animal clinics, and you just watch them run all day, and the expectations are high, and it just, it drains. And the other thing that I think lots of people don't know is the vet world is like 80% female. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's true in vet school. Maybe we're not to that point of actual vets, but it's at least 60. And not that men aren't, but so we're juggling families and we're, doing all the things that women do. And it just gets really, really stressful. And so for all of those reasons, lots of people have stopped advising the young to go into the profession. I'm definitely not there. I still think it's a great job. I still think, if you're taught to stand up for yourself, and I hope like those of us that are like my age can make it a better profession for those coming behind us, can stand up, can if we as a profession say we aren't taking this from clients, if you treat us poorly, we will not serve you. And people eventually learn that they can't be unkind, they can't walk on other people, else their pets are going to suffer, unfortunately, or they're going to have to go to like a heartless emergency clinic that they don't have a relationship with. I shouldn't say that. All emergency clinics aren't heartless. We're very thankful they're there because we don't want to do middle of the night calls. And they're expensive, but you get what you pay for, right? You get a huge staff that's working at 2 a.m. So they should be paid. So what do I tell them? I tell them you need to get good grades. You need to work hard. You need to not be afraid to work hard. But you need to realize you're not going into a profession that's all puppy kisses.
I do remember as a kid, I did want to be a veterinarian. And I remember my dad sitting me down and explaining to me all the requirements, all the math. And at that time, I could not do basically algebra. Now I can do trig, all calculus. That stuff is, it should never been a hindrance for me. But
Right.
you bring up some really big points that I would not think that the, I'll say, average college student would know going into that field. I would have never guessed that clients would be rude. As you were telling me that about the money, yes, there are insurance plans out there for your pets, which was a new concept to me when I had my animals. But I would have never thought of being rude to my veterinarian because of a high bill. I guess I just have had animals all my life, so I know that they come with a hefty price tag.
Yeah.
Probably lots of people don't realize if they haven't had pets in their life that they come with a hefty price tag. And my heart just goes out to all the people that have to deal with people who think that you should do this for free, or as you said, the staff take the brunt of some of those interactions, and that makes me sad as well, because if you're going to own a pet, you need to take the responsibility of the full pet. I'm the type of person, if I'm going to get a pet, it's going to be from basically birth till death, and you have to take the good with the bad.
Right.
And knowing that, and then making that choice, do I want to have a pet, because I know they will be costly and I will have to, watch them be euthanized. And so those are some things. Um, Tell us about a time that was just incredibly joyful and prideful, and you were so glad you went into the profession.
um, I mean, for me, I actually love mentoring students, and I sit on the board of the ASRP. So it's the American Association of Small Ruminant Practitioners. So we are the goat vets, and sheep and alpaca and whatever. And I love working with the vet students, because a huge part of our organization, because the vet students get very little education on small ruminants. And I love talking to them. I will have them come live with me and ride with me for 2 weeks. And so I take a lot of pride in that. Trying to think what else. If you have a farm that's like going through, a bad spell, and you have to solve the mystery of what's causing that, that's always really relieving. Like I had a dairy once that was going through, the term we use is abortion storm. I know in human medicine, abortion has become a loss of pregnancy that's caused by something, but that's not what the word means. I guess people would understand it better if I said like a miscarriage storm, because it was caused by disease. And they were losing like 75% of the pregnancies on their farm. And so, doing the testing and getting the results and finding a solution, like, to me, that has always been huge, because not only are these farmers losing tons of money, they're also like, it just breaks their heart. They're just so sad and depressed. And the few times that I have worked through that with a farmer and like got a solution and solved the problem, that's awesome. Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's plenty of sad stories, and we don't really want to go into
So
those.
many. Yeah.
Aw. Any last words for our listeners?
I guess, I like to tell everybody that owning a pet is not, it's a privilege. It's not a requirement. And, just remember that, like, the chances are that your vet's trying to swindle you out of money. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the chances are really small. Like, probably they're just doing their best and what they feel is important. And, yeah, just be kind. I mean, be kind to them, be kind to their staff, be patient. I mean, that should just be your worldview, period, being kind to people. But I just think less and less vets are going to put up with it. I think if you're unkind, I think you're just going to get fired from one clinic after another. I mean, if people are rude to me, I just block their number. Like I mean, I just don't think anybody should have to deal with you. And unfortunately, it's not you, it's your pet that will suffer. Um, but I think if kids want to go into vet med, it's still really rewarding. I promise we're trying hard to make it a profession on the rise, not on the decrease.
Well, Sarah, thank you very much. It was great catching back up with you. I will always continue to follow you on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you so much for your time.
So good to see you, Robin. Have a great night.
To all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.